Welcome back into the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from Awful Announcing, where it is Thanksgiving week, and we only have one show for you, but the news keeps delivering. I'm Brendon Kleen, joined by Drew Lerner and Ben Axelrod, a three-man weave show today. Hit follow, hit subscribe. We'll be back next week with what I'm sure will be a ton to talk about. 3 NFL games on Thanksgiving, a Black Friday bonanza on Amazon. There will be plenty to talk about. And today, Elle Duncan to Netflix and Jordon Hudson versus Pablo Torre, part 933,000, I believe, is if I have the count correct there. Let's start with Elle Duncan, though, guys. This one came out of nowhere. We had a whole other show planned, and then this news catapulted ahead of all of it because it tells us a lot. It's a big move in and of itself, and I think it tells us some things about the future that are pretty fascinating as well. But Elle Duncan, who is known at ESPN for her work as a SportsCenter anchor on the 6 o'clock show, which is obviously a big one, alongside Kevin Negandhi. She's also the face and voice of the women's basketball coverage at ESPN for both the WNBA and the women's basketball tournament, and some other bits and pieces as well, the Disney Plus women's sports show, whatever, but those are the things. She is a pretty high profile personality at ESPN. Last year, she had a recurring role on First Take, which is pretty rare for a SportsCenter anchor to get the bump there. She did a podcast for them, all that sort of stuff. And now she will be the face and voice of Netflix's sports coverage. We'll get to the fact that me saying Netflix's sports coverage doesn't actually describe much in 2025, in November 2025. But Ben, what did you just think of Elle getting hired and being the one that ultimately got this job we didn't know was even being hired for?
Yeah, I mean, stunning on both ends in terms of I'm assuming Elle's contract was coming up. It doesn't sound like this is something where she's leaving her contract prematurely. So I hadn't heard any buzz that Elle's contract was up. Obviously, we didn't know Netflix was in the market for like a full-time host, especially because their sports strategy has been so uneven and so choppy to this point. It really just surprising. It's you didn't see it coming on either end. You start to think about it, and from Elle's standpoint, it does make sense. I think she was a high profile talent at ESPN with kind of didn't have a high profile role necessarily to match it. And so it does make sense. It does seem like she will be working less. She has a young family. So all of that makes sense. But in terms of just like the instant reaction, it was stunning. It was, you didn't see this coming from either Elle's side or Netflix's side.
Drew, what did you think?
I think people are generally underreacting to this news, actually. I think people kind of underestimate how big of a role Elle Duncan played at ESPN. She is one of the faces of that network right now. The 6 p.m. SportsCenter slot is one of the most coveted of all the SportsCenter slots, probably just outside of, the post-game Scott Van Pelt hour. So, I mean, they're losing pretty much like the number 2 face of SportsCenter. They're losing the face of their women's basketball studio coverage, which of course is the WNBA finals and the entire women's basketball tournament. And, Elle Duncan, I think Andrew Marchand mentioned this in his reports, like she was like a company person, she was appearing at the upfronts, she was on their marquee properties like First Take. And Netflix just came in and straight up poached her. They're paying her more money. She's going to be working less. Clearly Elle Duncan thought that, I mean, who wouldn't think that's a good deal, right? Like to work less for more money. But there's also a lot of potential in this role for her, right? Netflix is clearly going to start building out a sports division now. They already have, in my opinion, some high profile events, including the Women's World Cup, which, is just over a year away now, 18 months away. And you got to imagine she's going to be the primary studio host for that Women's World Cup, which is a huge event. I don't think she would have reached the level of that sort of event at ESPN unless you're putting the WNBA finals or the women's Final Four on that level, which I would argue it is not. And so for Elle Duncan, I think this is a great move. You're really going to be the centerpiece for an up and coming sports division, which is clearly going to be built around big events. And, who wouldn't want to be, the go-to person on that?
Duncan's kind of the thing that we say ESPN doesn't do anymore, which is develop talent into stars. Like, she left WEEI and I think some TV stuff, and New England sports content came to ESPN and grew into what she is now. And that's a big loss, because she not only, that's a cool story, but like you just said, Drew, she was on not only some of the biggest properties that they have, but some of the most high growth properties that they have in those women's basketball events, right? The finals and the Final Four and whatever. She also had rejuvenated the women's basketball College Game Day show as a traveling thing that actually pulled some interesting guests and had some viral moments. That show that her and Chinea Gumike and Andrea Carter did was like the best new piece of content that ESPN had come up with in a while in terms of the public reception to it and just how informative and entertaining it was. And they literally turned that into a Disney Plus show. And I interviewed Elle about that, and like, she seemed really excited and proud of all that. And now that whole thing is gone. It's now going to have to be replaced, and it may not be able to be replicated. That said, she also filled a niche that ESPN is most stocked up with already, which is host of big events. They have a lot of those. That's not something that they really struggle to find. That's like the thing that they're best at doing is hosts. And it's arguably the one place that they have developed others like Duncan the most successfully, right? Like Malika Andrews is another one you would point to, Laura Rutledge. Then you get to Scott Van Pelt and Mike Greenberg, who hosts all the NFL stuff that they do. So if I were her, I would look at that, and I would be a little nervous of like, what else can I do here, right? And so I think that that's where you probably, if you're Elle Duncan, I doubt she's like thrilled to leave. I think she did like ESPN and got to do a lot of interesting stuff there, but this is clearly a big opportunity. And I would imagine she at least has some kind of inkling of the types of events that Netflix is going to want to pursue, because right now her job description it doesn't include much. So I would have to be sold on, hey, we feel pretty good we're going to get X. And I want to talk about what that might be. But is there anybody else that, Ben, you would have looked at here if you're Netflix? Like, we heard that they did talk to Malika Andrews because her contract was up this summer. Is there somebody, not even just at ESPN, but like Elle Duncan is a little bit specific to at least her public reputation is like women's sports first and foremost. Is there somebody more generally known or connected with the NFL, for instance, a bigger sport, something that you would have targeted instead of her, that you think they might have targeted instead of her?
So if we were having this conversation a week ago and you said, Ben, Netflix is in the market for a sports host for this role, they're going to be the head of our sports division. They're going to be the face of our sports division. My guess would have been Kay Adams. Like, I would have made Kay Adams the betting favorite.
Because she kind of already was. That's the weird part of this.
Right. I mean, she already hosts their NFL coverage on Christmas Day, was well received for that. She also, like, she's at FanDuel, but it's kind of like a floating role. Like, she's very independent to herself. So you definitely would have thought she would have had the freedom to go. We thought Elle was under contract. And so like, but I do see a lot of overlap there. Like, they are both hosts, but they are both personality driven hosts. Like, Elle is a host who has a personality who you can put on First Take. Like, when we were talking about who's going to replace Molly Karam on First Take, I never really even thought of Elle, because Elle is more a personality than she is a host, even though she is slotted into a hosting role. And so that is the kind of like host I would have thought. But yeah, I mean, Kay Adams definitely would have stood out. I mean, I think, I don't know. I don't necessarily think of Elle and associate her with women's sports. I think because of SportsCenter, you kind of do associate her with everything. I think if anything, you look at ESPN, and when I said she doesn't have a high profile role, what I probably meant is she doesn't have an NFL role. Like, NFL is ESPN's high profile role. And so she didn't really have an NFL role, and she didn't have a pathway to an NFL role between Mike Greenberg and Laura Rutledge and Scott Van Pelt. And like, they just have a lot of talent there already in the hosting position. So I think this role makes a lot of sense. But yeah, if we were going to brainstorm, like Kay Adams is the name who stood out to me. And I do wonder if there were talks there.
You got any names, Drew?
Yeah, no, my name would have been Kay Adams as well. But I think Netflix made a pretty sharp decision here to go the direction they did. I just think Elle Duncan, there's a little bit more on the bone there. When I watch Kay Adams, it's a little bit, I don't know. It's almost as if like a communications person is interviewing a guest. Like it's all very positive, fluffy stuff. Elle Duncan has the ability to, actually hold court with some of these bigger personalities, bigger athletes. And maybe there's like a little more depth to what Elle Duncan is doing than Kay Adams. And she's proven that she can do that across sports, whereas Kay Adams is more NFL focused. And as we know, Netflix has the NFL for one day a year. So I don't know if you want to tie your whole sports division to someone like Kay Adams.
And Malika is so central to basketball in the same type of way where, and you're right. Like, I don't think Elle Duncan is only a women's sports broadcaster by any means. I think the average person, if they've seen her, that's probably where they've seen her, just being reasonable about how much smaller Sports Center is for the average person these days. It's probably First Take or those women's basketball games that they might have seen her on pregame for. Okay, so I think the even bigger thing about this, which Drew you hinted at, is like this tells us that Netflix is going to carve out and pursue a much bigger stable of live sports rights than they already have, right? She's not going to be appearing on WWE Raw. The World Cup's 18 months away. Christmas NFL, like, 1 of 365. They have this MLB package, which is 3 of 365. So, okay, triple the amount of content, but not enough to pay somebody full time at all either. They have these boxing matches that they brought Kate Scott on to be the anchor of the Tyson Paul fight. So, a similar type of person, a very exuberant and, entertaining personality who can really anchor a desk and keep personalities together. I think there's a clear pattern here. I could see Elle Duncan doing that at a high level, but this is 2 weeks of work, so I think that this tells us something. My question is do we just have to wait, Drew? Because I don't see, you don't just get to decide to air sports events. If you did, Netflix would probably be doing a lot more of them already. And there's not much up for grabs right now. So is this kind of a wait and see to actually watch Elle Duncan do good work at Netflix?
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of her role falls outside of live sports and maybe doing sports adjacent content. We've obviously seen Netflix get into God knows however many sports adjacent shows. Maybe there's something to be done there, like some sort of weekly general sports program that's hosted by Elle Duncan. And then there's also what Netflix is doing abroad, because if you look at the domestic rights landscape right now, there's just not much out there, right? For the next few years, there's really, it's a bare cupboard when it comes to live sports rights. But, I'm seeing reports today that Netflix is looking at Premier League rights in Europe, which could, who knows? I couldn't see them putting Elle Duncan on that sort of property, but like, who knows if she's like really the centerpiece of your company, maybe you want her doing that. But maybe there's other sports abroad that you send Elle Duncan to, and that could have been an exciting part of this job for her if that was part of Netflix's pitch. But you're right. Like as it stands, like this is not a really time consuming job. So there's definitely going to be elements of Elle Duncan's role that like we just do not know. But to your point, Brendon, like this really does show that Netflix is committed to sports and committed to live sports specifically. And I think this is kind of the first move of a long-term plan that maybe 3 years from now, when we see MLB and hockey rights and potentially more NFL rights come up, they're going to be in a much better place to be a competitive bidder in those in those markets because they actually have an established sports division.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but I think as Netflix, as other companies catch up a little bit in terms of subscriber count and investment and vision on the streaming side, Netflix is going to have to worry about things like churn and total engagement time more than they do now, where I think that they can count on people keeping their subscription because of the total volume of content and a lot of must-see properties. I think that sports is a way to make sure people are repeatedly coming to your platform on a week-by-week or even day-by-day basis. And that's where I think the push for them is going to ultimately come here. And so I imagine that they'll be on the phone. We already know that they have been, like, it's not like they haven't been in these talks already, but like I look at something like the NCAA basketball tournament, and that feels like the best of both worlds. The men's basketball tournament, like that feels like the best of both worlds for me, where it's prestigious and special enough that Netflix can pat itself on the back that it's continuing to do these big events, but it also takes up like a month, and it is going to draw tons and tons and tons of people. And in fact, probably some people who don't even have a Netflix subscription right now. Ben, I think that like, to me, those are the types of events that I would bookmark. And that's also not available till the end of the decade. I think that Orand and Marchand have talked about like that they could be in on the World Series. That might be what they have their eyes on with this Field of Dreams home run derby opening night thing, is maybe they just get the World Series and that's enough for them. I think we should be ready for Netflix to kind of grab these chunks of stuff that are really big and really important, but not, Sunday football.
Yeah, I think, the whole thing with churn rate and the reason why WWE and UFC are so valuable, despite being much lower on the totem pole in terms of popularity, is they have monthly tentpole events that you have to stay subscribed to these services for. And so I think for Netflix, like if I'm Netflix, my goal would be, let's have one big sports event a month. Let's have one big event that everybody comes back to. And you mentioned the MLB package. You add in MLB opening day, you add in the home run derby, you add in, Field of Dreams. I don't know how many subscribers that's going to draw, but you can pretty quickly get to like Christmas Day for NFL, 3 or 4 boxing events a year. You can pretty quickly get to like one big sporting event a month for Netflix. And that's before, my first thought with all this was Netflix must feel pretty good that these NFL rights are going to become available sooner rather than later, which we've already heard both the NFL and the networks openly talk about. And so, I would imagine as soon as those rights are going to come open, Netflix will be a little more heavily involved. We've already seen the NFL carve out pieces of its package that didn't previously exist. So that would be my big thing, especially as it relates to Elle Duncan, is like, she's going to host one tentpole event a month. And then, I agree. There's probably going to be some other element that's a little more weekly, a little more timely in terms of content and consumption.
Okay. So let's close. I have one final Elle Duncan related question, but I have a little bit of an off-road here, which is a views from the subreddit that I'd like to get to. All right. So the community on r/Bill Simmons is convinced that Bill Simmons is going to host a Any Given Wednesday type show on Netflix. Like, they've just decided that this is happening. So the post that I will reference here is from a week ago. And it says, Netflix show might be a talk show with celebrities. In the mailbag, Bill mentioned that he'll have a lot of celebrities on his show next year, which kind of hints at a talk show, something between the Manning cast and Conan/Rich Eisen. I love the just free association that people do. These celebrity rewatchables in the Spike interview are probably the rehearsal, with that room being the setting. I guess the studio that he built in his house is what they're talking about. Very parasocial post here. But could Elle Duncan do something similar? I will throw out that Amazon, when it got Thursday Night Football and some other sports, tried live daily sports content. People don't even remember. Carrie Champion had a show. Master Tesfatsion had a show. over there. Like those guys, the Amazon tried this. It failed miserably. They canceled it within like 6 months because nobody was watching. I don't know if it can really work, but these people, plus this Elle Duncan hire, tells me they could at least be thinking about that to just get people thinking about sports and this type of inventory content as a Netflix thing that they should be expecting.
I think they could try it. I don't think it would be successful. I don't. It sounds like, to your point, this sounds like something, other companies have tried, and even I think Netflix, what it have, it's late night show with John Mulaney, and it's kind of hit or miss. Like it kind of it had some buzz early on, but kind of came and went. So they could try it. I wouldn't have much optimism for its long-term success though.
Yeah. Drew?
Yeah.
Any final thoughts here?
Yeah, I kind of concur with what Ben said. It's one thing to like buy the Ringer podcasts and build shows around Bill Simmons. It's another to build a show around Elle Duncan. I mean, as much as I gassed her up like 10 minutes ago and saying how important she was to ESPN, and I think it's a good hire for Netflix. I'm not sure people are tuning in to the Elle Duncan show on Netflix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I pointed out actually before this even came down, as Netflix has made more and more of these video deals, they've made one now with the Ringer and iHeartMedia to have video versions of a lot of these popular podcasts on their platform, that Netflix actually had a sports podcast that no one knew about. And Kay Adams hosted it. It was called The Sports Club. It was very irregular. Yeah. It wasn't even weekly. It was like, when they had something to talk about, they would put out a YouTube video, which is the absolute worst way to do a podcast. It should surprise nobody that it didn't work. But, that just speaks to, you have to have an idea that's regular and cuts through and is interesting to people. Otherwise, it's just going to get lost. There's too much content out there. So maybe they have an idea up their sleeves, but it doesn't immediately makes sense to me what that would be. Last thing, rapid fire. Drew, then Ben. Who will replace Elle Duncan as the women's basketball anchor at ESPN?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about this. Ben, do you have someone in mind?
Jess Sims. I like Jess Sims, and she seems to she kind of got relegated from, like, she was the top sideline reporter for the men's team and then wound up she's like the number 2 or number 3 sideline reporter now on women. So Jess Sims was the first name that came to mind.
Yeah, I don't know if
Malika would be the easy name, but I don't think Malika Andrews can handle all that.
Yeah.
That's too much work.
Yeah,
she already does, I guess, now the B team show for the NBA, but she also does a daily live show, for the studio programming on ESPN and the finals and all that stuff. So I don't see it. I don't know. I don't have a great answer either. It seems like something that's up for grabs. And if I was a young reporter or host there, I would be, telling my agent to pester ESPN management, because I think both of those properties are going to continue to be a lot bigger as we get into the 2030s. And
I'll throw out a name real quick that I like on ACC Network, Taylor Tannenbaum.
You liked her as a first take possibility, right?
Yeah. She was my way down the board sleeper pick for first take. I think she's got a lot of potential.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. I saved us very little space to talk about this on purpose, guys. Jordon Hudson has threatened to sue Pablo Torre. The allegation is that he defamed her character with the reporting that he has done on his podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out, throughout 2025 regarding her involvement in the UNC football program by way of her relationship with one Bill Belichick, who is the head coach of the Tar Heels football program. Where I will start here is, we have another segment we could pull out, which we don't usually do for lawsuits, because usually lawsuits are a little more serious than this one appears to be. Wagyu versus cheese steak, I should say, not cake. And this one's a lot closer to cheesesteak, in my opinion, because the beef is not very high quality here.
This might be steakums.
Yeah, this might be like
steakums.
Ground beef or something.
Yeah.
Like she's posted this screenshot, guys, where It's allegedly an Instagram conversation with an SID at North Carolina or some kind of communications person, where she supposedly correctly stated her birth date, and she is trying to walk Pablo into a corner over his allegation that she was a little shaky on her age at various times as she ingratiated herself at North Carolina. If that's the bombshell, I think this may be the last time we ever talk about this lawsuit. Drew.
I love this story so much. Like it, this is so perfect for Thanksgiving when like there's not really much going on in the sports media business world, which is what we like to talk about here. Although Elle Duncan kind of helped us out, but man, it's just so like clear that Hudson just wants to be in the headline. She's so desperate for attention. Like she just loves being on the cover of the New York Post or the back page or whatever so much that she's threatening to sue Pablo Torre over something that is so clearly not possible, like not anything that would hold up in a court of law. I don't know. I just love it. I want more of this story. I really want her to actually file a lawsuit because, man, like the episodes we would get out of Pablo for if that actually happened, like
he might just live
incredible.
Stream the court proceedings on his YouTube channel with the confidence that he seems to be exuding on this one. I mean,
we already told Ben that he was going to be the the Jeremy Tubin of this case. Is that his name?
Dominic Dunn.
Dominic Dunn
covered the OJ trial for Vanity Fair famously. That's the role I'm going to take.
You'll be minted in the history books. I think so like the crazy part of this to me is, well, one, Pablo's already put some suspicion out there about this alleged Instagram screenshot, which may or may not have been altered, according to him. But also the craziest thing about this, to take it seriously for one moment, is that Jordon's post on Instagram, I think, and Twitter, where she said, "Oh, P.S. I'm suing you," or whatever, to Pablo. She's holding the press pass for, like a VIP, not a press pass, like a VIP field pass for the football stadium over there, which was one of the central revelations that Pablo had put out earlier in the year, was that she was supposedly banned from the facility, or, heavily encouraged not to be around because she was meddling and getting in the way of the success of the program. If I were her, setting aside the fact that she's a very public figure and very relevant to any reporting about North Carolina or Bill Belichick, which is why Pablo has continued to cover her so closely, I would probably start with the fact that he supposedly got that very key detail, very prominent piece of information wrong, right? If I was going to sue him, I would say, hey, I was never banned, and I have proof, which obviously we've continued to see proof. She's been on the sideline during these games and stuff. That feels like a very, if I was going to say this person harmed my character and expect damages, it would be like, hey, he reported that I was like legally prohibited from entering the grounds of my partner's work. Not, he said I lied about my birthday, but I didn't. Like, it feels like the evidence was right there, and then she just glossed over it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if there's a distinction between like being banned from the facility and being banned from the stadium, like any of that, because anybody
can feels at least more solid than the screenshot of an Instagram message.
Well, so what's weird about that is I don't remember if Pablo reported that she lied or like what the mechanism there was, but the basis of Pablo's reporting was her birthday was incorrect in this document, and Jordan's screenshot only confirmed that it was incorrect. Now, whether that's because she lied or whether that's because the SID or whoever assumed her birthday was a certain year that it wasn't, like Pablo's reporting, it seems like she confirmed was correct. So I don't know what the basis
if
of
we're talking about 2000 versus 2001 on a birth date for some arbitrary document at North Carolina, I don't even think it makes it in front of a judge's eyes. I think that the clerk at the county court rips the paper up and sends a bill to Jordon for wasting their time. Like, what are we even doing here? It's absurd.
Yeah. I mean,
It
who
doesn't
knows?
matter at all.
With how connected Belichick is to this administration, who knows how high up the court system it could get. I will admit, I had my first moment where I felt bad for Jordon Hudson a few weeks ago. And that was, I didn't like all the stuff people making fun of her being an adult cheerleader. That felt like it crossed the line of being mean-spirited to me. And it felt like she's clearly a 24-year-old figuring out life. She still likes cheering. Just like let her be a competitive cheerleader. Yeah. And everybody's making jokes about her being a competitive cheerleader. And then all this comes out like within like 48 hours. And just thank God I didn't tweet anything about like leave Jordon alone. But yeah,
it's tough, right? Because like you see how she seemingly treated people like in that underdog leaked footage. And like she does seem to be mistreating people. And so I understand the instinct to like shit on her in return. But
for sure,
there are times where it's like she's a good-looking young woman who had hobbies when she was growing up, and between the pageant thing and this continues to live those out. It's not really that strange or inappropriate of her to be doing that in a nutshell, in a vacuum, you know. But the last thing I'll say on the I have another rapid fire question for you guys, but one more media centric angle on this that I think is actually bothersome to me is how quiet the former players and kind of Patriots mafia out there has been about a story like this, for example, versus how eager they are to make Pablo look like a clown at every chance that they get when he has actual news about the program or their relationship or her, right? Like, people who I think of actually decently highly have been very against Pablo's reporting every step of the way. And this feels like a very clear example that shows at the very least, like the circus that's going on in Chapel Hill. And you don't see these.
Who do you mean?
Who do I mean that's been against Pablo?
Yeah.
I've seen even like Chris Long question his reporting at times. Chris Long brought him on, which I respect, but I think Edelman, I've seen kind of cast aspersions. I know it's just clips. It's just whatever. I don't think anybody's trying to end Pablo's career. My only point is like, you know, don't only do the easy version of weighing in on this story. If you want to be the guy who's I'm a former Patriot, so therefore this story is relevant to me and my audience, then make it, keep the same energy when stuff like this would seemingly, or even the Mike Lombardi reporting that Pablo had a few weeks back that made Lombardi look pretty bad. I understand if you've made your mind up about Pablo, then you're just going to leave. You're just going to disregard everything he does, I suppose. And this maybe just gets put into that pile, but I don't know. It just kind of, it's like, okay, laugh at the nerdy reporter and then move on with your life. Like, okay, guys, high five. You mission accomplished, but, or you could engage with it more seriously and maybe be concerned for the fact that your dude who led you to all this success, his legacy seems to be dying one fake frivolous lawsuit after the next, come on.
Yeah. I just I would pay such good money to know what is going through Bill Belichick's head when he sees Jordon Hudson do all of this. He's so no nonsense. God, when they when Bill Belichick gets home from the practice facility every day and Jordon Hudson's there, cooking up dinner or whatever she's doing. Yeah, maybe that's too traditional family values, but maybe it's a very modern relationship. But in any case, when they're talking at night, what is the small talk about suing Pablo Torre? Is Bill Belichick in support of this? This is crazy.
Well, yeah. Also, I just want to add two more names. People who are Mike Lombardi fans, Bill Simmons, Pat McAfee, people who were both vocally, in Simmons' case, very infamously questioned Pablo's reporting, right? I think that, there's just been a kind of picking back up on and then letting go of this story depending on what suits people to talk about. And it feels a little ridiculous. But yeah, the Belichick thing is the central reason why this matters, as Drew is getting at.
Well, I question how aware he is, like, of any of this. Like, I think a lot of this stuff happens and he doesn't know. I think he poses for pictures on the beach and he doesn't know that it's going up on Instagram for everybody to see. Like, I think in his mind, like, my football life is my football life and my private life is my private life. And I don't understand why they would ever interconnect. And meanwhile, you have this whole economy being built now on, like, coverage around the story, including from us. So, my big thing on it is I think she's getting bad advice. I think she's getting no advice. Like, she's to your point about the athletes, Brendon, I think there's this, like, just misunderstanding of, like, journalism and reporting and, like, I don't like that, so I can sue them for that. And so, or, why would you ever talk about somebody's personal life? That's not above
calling him a snitch when it's like,
yeah. So I think she's somebody who doesn't understand how any of this works. And I think, to your point, a lot of the athletes and in some instances, media personalities, I don't think they're necessarily the most clued in on how a lot of this stuff, actually transpires.
For sure. The North Carolina Tar Heels are 2-5 in the ACC this year, and the season has not gone as planned. Does Belichick make it to next season? Let's close there, Ben.
I don't think so. I've always thought this was kind of one and done, seeing the way it went. I don't think it doesn't sound like North Carolina is particularly happy about how all of this has gone down. And I also think I'd add there are going to be 2 documentaries coming out here in the next couple of weeks. One is from the NBC affiliate in Raleigh, which has done really great reporting on Bill Belichick in North Carolina. They're going to release a documentary about this. And then Vice TV is going to have a new show. I think it's called Out of Bounds. And their first episode is going to be about Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson. So even though I don't think the Tar Heels are going to be preparing for a bowl game, I think these names are very much going to be still in the headlines. And that's the kind of stuff that boosters and the powers that be, that typically is what moves the needle when it comes to obtaining buyout money and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Completely same page. And I think his buyout is really low, if I remember the terms of his contract. But yeah, I think
which we thought was going to be to his benefit.
Right.
And the tables have turned.
I think if you look at the type of university North Carolina is, they have a lot of people, boosters, administration that think very highly, rightfully so, of the university. Like, it's one of the top public universities in the country. I think they think it's a complete circus and a bit of an embarrassment that this is happening at their school. I mean, when you think of North Carolina athletics now, like, this is the first thing you think of. I think they want to get rid of the mess. They're going to cut bait as soon as they can. They'll probably try to find a way to make it look amicable. I saw a report today from, I think, Josina Anderson that said at least 3 NFL teams are apparently still interested in Belichick. Yeah,
against all odds.
I'm a bit skeptical of that too. But yeah, I think the writing's on the wall here, and I'll be eager to watch that documentary from what, WRAL.
Yeah. Clip me when he's coaching the Cardinals in August, but we'll see where that all goes.
Hey, that would shoot him straight up the relevancy rankings, Brendon. So
Thank you.
Maybe that's a great hire.
Maybe I should be rooting for it. No Kyler Murray, but we get Jordan in Phoenix. Wonderful. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back for you next week with 3 live shows covering all things sports media. Check us out at awfulannouncing.com or wherever you get your social media content in the meantime, and we'll catch you Monday.